Okay. Um, so anchoring is the tendency to rely too much on information that is presented early. Pricing strategy demands that we take extreme care in how we deal with price early in early conversations, and it can be information that we provide as a service provider, or as a consultant agency, whatever. It can be information that is available that can be researched and obtained. We have to be very conscious and very careful with what happens early on with pricing, because all too often a buyer will get a number buried into their head and there's no extracting it. It has buried itself into their brain and there is no steering clear of it whatsoever. If they set $100,000 in their head and you come back 2 weeks later and it's now gone to $200,000, they're always going to have that initial $100,000 price, and everything will be compared relative to that. So anchoring happens with all of us, even as consumer buyers. Anchoring occurs. So we have to be careful about how we deal with anchoring. Loss aversion is the tendency to prefer avoiding losses over acquiring equivalent gains, which is very interesting, and it's often difficult to explain, and I'm going to do my best. So losing elements, if you present options and they have various elements in them, presenting options that are high-priced options that have many elements, removing those options from that high-priced, removing those elements from that high-priced option has a greater impact on us as decision makers than starting with a small low-priced option and starting to stack things on top of it. We will be more hesitant to start with a large item and have things removed to lower the price than we will to have a small, maybe I'm getting this backwards. I know it's really difficult. So the point loss aversion, how loss aversion wraps into pricing, is that people feel more pain when they start to pull elements away rather than have them sort of added onto the various elements or pricing elements, etc. So let's come back to this. I often get myself backwards and sideways on loss aversion, but we can talk more, and hopefully some of you are coming up with some general ideas about how we are loss averse in our decision making. Okay, confirmation bias is a tendency to jump to conclusions that confirm what we always believe to be true, whether or not they are true. It's based on just beliefs. And the sunk cost fallacy is committing to something that you've invested time and energy in, despite any future negative outcomes. And we'll talk about how these all sort of play out here. So sorry about my stumbling over loss aversion, but we can dig into that if people have some questions about it. Okay. So here's how we can be conscious of and leverage cognitive bias, and I'll let you read through these. Okay, so here's leveraging cognitive bias. So anchoring high, presenting high numbers in a smart, effective way early on in pricing conversations and in buying, selling situations make future lower prices seem more reasonable. So rather than presenting low prices initially and then having higher prices come into the conversation later on, if we are strategic about how we leverage those high anchors, future conversations with where the dollars start to diminish, suddenly those prices seem way more reasonable than they would have independently. It's leveraging that sort of high anchoring. We can leverage loss aversion by presenting and showing very clearly what's included and what's excluded with various options, not just stacking everything that's included, but also being very explicit about what's not included, conjuring this powerful sense of loss aversion that will impact how decisions are made between options. We can call out expectations, this confirmation bias. We can call out expectations very early on in conversations and in documents that can mitigate perceptions of individuals kind of coming into a situation. Oh, they're a high cost provider, or they're going to approach this a particular way, or whatever their their bid or their proposal is going to include certain things, we can call out, be explicit, name those things early on to kind of mitigate that initial sort of confirmation bias that buyers come into this process with. And the sunk cost fallacy, we can leverage that by offering those initial get started options with low price that starts us down a path together, putting resistance, in place, preventing them from wanting to head elsewhere for future work.